What would you do if you discovered that your own company was systematically destroying lives based on the color of skin? This is the story of one woman who risked everything to expose a truth so dark, it would shake the foundations of Wall Street itself. In the heart of Manhattan, where glass towers pierced the sky like steel monuments to ambition, Amara Johnson walked through the marble lobby of Caldwell and Associates every morning with her head held high. To anyone watching, she appeared to be living the American dream, a brilliant 28-year-old financial analyst at one of the city's most prestigious investment firms, armed with an MBA from Harvard and a mind that could dissect market trends like a surgeon wielding a scalpel. But dreams, Amara had learned, could quickly become nightmares when wrapped in expensive suits and hidden behind polite smiles. The 42nd floor of the Caldwell building hummed with the quiet intensity of money being made and power being wielded. Amara's corner desk offered a breathtaking view of Central Park, a privilege that should have filled her with pride. Instead, it served as a daily reminder of how isolated she felt in this world of privilege. She was one of only 3 black employees on the entire floor, and the only black woman in the investment division. Every morning, she would arrive an hour early, not because she needed the time, but because she had learned that excellence wasn't enough, she needed to be flawless. The other analysts would stroll in at 9, coffee in hand, discussing their weekend yacht trips or ski lodge adventures. Amara would already have 3 market analyses completed, her research so thorough it often uncovered opportunities that others missed entirely. Yet somehow, those opportunities rarely bore her name when presented to clients. Richard Caldwell, the firm's senior partner and heir to the family legacy, ruled the floor with the kind of authority that came from generations of inherited power. He was a man who wore his privilege like an expensive cologne, subtle to those who belonged, overwhelming to those who didn't. His interactions with Amara were always professionally courteous, sprinkled with just enough condescension to make her question whether she was being overly sensitive. The first sign that something was deeply wrong came during a team meeting in the firm's mahogany-paneled conference room. Amara had spent weeks developing a groundbreaking analysis of emerging markets in Southeast Asia, identifying investment opportunities that could yield unprecedented returns. She presented her findings with the confidence of someone who knew she had struck gold. Richard listened with apparent interest, nodding thoughtfully as she outlined her projections. The other analysts sat in respectful silence, some taking notes, others simply absorbing the brilliance of her work. 3 days later, Amara watched in stunned silence as her colleague, Derek Morrison, a man whose Harvard connections mattered more than his mediocre performance, presented her exact analysis to the firm's biggest client. Word for word, graph for graph, her intellectual property had been stolen and repackaged under Derek's name. When she approached Richard about the blatant theft, he looked at her with the kind of paternal disappointment reserved for children who didn't understand how the adult world worked. His words were carefully chosen, legally bulletproof. Perhaps there had been some miscommunication about project ownership. Maybe she should be more careful about documenting her contributions in the future, and surely she understood that in collaborative environments, ideas often evolved through team input. Amara left that meeting feeling like she was drowning in quicksand. The harder she fought to prove her worth, the deeper she sank into invisibility. But Amara Johnson was not raised to surrender. Her parents, both educators who had fought their own battles against systemic barriers, had instilled in her a strength that ran deeper than any corporate structure could reach. Her father, a high school principal, had once told her that dignity was the one thing no one could take from you unless you handed it over willingly. She decided to document everything. Every stolen idea, every microaggression, every subtle act of sabotage. If the system was rigged against her, she would expose its mechanisms with the same analytical precision she brought to market research. What she discovered would change not only her life but challenge the very foundations of an industry built on old money and older prejudices. As Amara began to dig deeper into the firm's practices, she noticed patterns that chilled her to the bone. The 3 minority employees on her floor weren't there by accident. They were tokens, carefully placed to deflect accusations of discrimination while being systematically undermined from within. The real revelation came from an unexpected source: Lila Martinez, the night janitor who cleaned the executive offices after hours. Lila had been invisible to most employees for over a decade, but her eyes had seen everything, and her heart couldn't stay silent any longer about what she had witnessed. The fluorescent lights cast long shadows across the empty trading floor as Lila Martinez pushed her cleaning cart through the maze of desks. For 12 years, she had been the invisible woman of Caldwell and Associates, arriving after the power brokers went home to their penthouses and leaving before they returned to their glass kingdom. But invisibility, Lila had learned, was the greatest superpower of all. People said things around janitors that they would never dare speak in boardrooms. They left documents on desks, held private phone calls, and conducted business as if the woman emptying their trash cans didn't exist. Tonight, however, Lila couldn't shake the image of the young black woman who always worked late, hunched over spreadsheets with the intensity of someone trying to prove she belonged. Amara reminded Lila of her own daughter, Maria, who had fought similar battles in the legal world before finding her own path. As Lila cleaned Richard Caldwell's corner office, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. His computer screen was still active, displaying what appeared to be an internal company memo. The header read, "Project Whitewash Performance Management Protocol." Her English wasn't perfect, but she understood enough to recognize what she was seeing. The document outlined a systematic plan to undermine minority employees through impossible performance standards, strategic project reassignments, and manufactured disciplinary actions. It was corporate warfare disguised as business efficiency. But the most horrifying discovery was yet to come. While emptying Caldwell's wastebasket, Lila found crumpled bank statements and wire transfer receipts. Her hands trembled as she smoothed out the papers under her small flashlight. The numbers were staggering, hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing from Caldwell and Associates to organizations with names that made her stomach turn: Heritage Foundation for American Values and Traditional Business Alliance. Lila had fled her home country decades ago to escape exactly this kind of hatred. She recognized the coded language, the sanitized racism wrapped in patriotic rhetoric. These weren't just investment firms, they were hate groups, and Richard Caldwell was funding them with company profits. The next morning, Lila watched Amara arrive for work, shoulders squared despite the weight she carried. The young woman had no idea she was walking into a trap that had been designed specifically to destroy her. During her lunch break, Lila made a decision that terrified her. Using her broken English and all the courage she could muster, she approached Amara in the employee break room when no one else was around. The conversation was awkward, filled with whispered Spanish and careful English, but the message was clear. Lila had seen documents, had evidence of something much bigger than stolen credit or workplace discrimination. This was systematic, organized, and funded at the highest levels. Amara's initial skepticism melted away as Lila described details that only someone with access to Caldwell's private office could know. The cleaning lady who everyone ignored had become an accidental spy, and what she had discovered was more sinister than Amara's worst fears. That evening, Lila did something that could cost her the job she desperately needed to support her family. She used her master key to let Amara into the building after hours, leading her through darkened hallways to Caldwell's office like a guide through enemy territory. Together, they photographed documents, copied files, and gathered evidence of a conspiracy that reached far beyond one investment firm. Caldwell wasn't just discriminating against minority employees, he was using company resources to fund organizations dedicated to maintaining white supremacy in corporate America. The partnership between the Harvard-educated analyst and the immigrant janitor was unlikely, but it was also unstoppable. Lila's access combined with Amara's analytical skills created a formidable investigation team that Caldwell never saw coming. As they worked through the night, Lila shared stories of other minority employees who had been systematically pushed out over the years. Brilliant minds who had been labeled as cultural misfits or Team chemistry problems. Each departure had been carefully orchestrated to look like natural attrition or performance-based decisions. But now they had proof. Bank records, internal memos, email chains that revealed the ugly truth behind Caldwell's pristine corporate facade. The evidence painted a picture of institutional racism so comprehensive and deliberate that it took Amara's breath away. By dawn, they had enough documentation to destroy Richard Caldwell's empire. But they both knew that having evidence and being able to use it safely were two very different things. Caldwell had power, connections, and resources that could crush them both without a second thought. As Lila prepared to return to her cleaning duties and Amara gathered the copy documents, they made a pact. They would find a way to expose the truth, no matter the personal cost. Some battles were bigger than individual careers or personal safety. The janitor and the analyst had become unlikely allies in a war they never wanted to fight, but could no longer ignore. The question now was whether they could bring down a system designed to destroy people exactly like them. Episode 1 ends with the evidence gathered, but the most dangerous part of their mission was just beginning. If this story of Amara's journey inspired you, like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Turn on the notification button to get notified when episode 2 is out. And always remember, we're one people with different skin color.